That is the hagiography of the Nurbakhshia, written by Ali Kashmiri, completed around 1552. And one complete manuscript is a private collection of the Nurbakhshi Shaikh Pir Amun Ali Shah. And its edition was recently published. Another Said Ali, completed in the 1590s. The only extant manuscript is housed in the Oriental Research Library in Srinagar, which was several scholars published its English translations, and Zubaida Jan published its edition. The catalyst for the flourishing of Persian provincial histories was the event that a manuscript of the Rajatraginis was dedicated to the third Mughal Emperor Akbar during his royal visit to Kashmir in 1589, which was subsequently, the Rajatraginis were subsequently translated into Persian by Mullah Shah Muhammad Shahabadi. Manuscript of the Muhammad Shahabadi's Persian translation of the Rajatraginis are housed in the British Library and the Asiatic Society of Kolkata. Shahabadi's Persian translation was revised by Abdul Qadir Badawi in 1591 and became an important source for the history of Kashmir in the Mughal Persian historiography. In addition, an abridgment of the Persian translation was compiled during the reign of the fourth emperor Jahangir. François Bernier, a French traveler, obtained one manuscript of this abridgment, the Intihab Tarikh Kashmir, and he brought back to Paris. And I published its collected text of the Intihab Tarikh Kashmir in 2018 with a study. And the main topic of this talk, the Bahāristān-i Shāhī, was compiled in 1614. At that time, the governor of the Kashmir, the governor of the Bari of Kashmir, was a descendant of the Chandra clan, Hyder Malik. He had been appointed provincial governor of Kashmir by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. And several years later, Jahangir commissioned Hyder Malik to compile a history of Kashmir. So, and Hyder Malik undertook the task of compiling a historical work himself, and he compiled the Tarikh Kashmir in 2020 or 2021. And this work, Hyder Malik's work, established a model of Persian provincial history of Kashmir, and several histories were produced in the 18th century and 19th century, and most of them followed the style of Hyder Malik's Tarikh Kashmir. So this chart is the textual transmission from the Rajatraginis to Hyder Malik's Tarikh Kashmir, and the Bahāristān-i Shāhī is here. As shown in this chart, the Bahāristān-i Shāhī refers not only to the Rajatraginis, but also the Jamia Tabari by Rashiduddin Hamadani. I will discuss this later. So now we turn our attention to the author of the Bahāristān-i Shāhī, the anonymous author, relying on the text itself. There is no mention of the author himself in the text. It merely states that one of his distant ancestors was a man named Mullah Husamuddin, who, as a murid of the Sufi Sheikh Baba Haji Adham, traveled from Ghazna to Kashmir with his master during the reign of the sixth Shamilid ruler, Sikandar. And he worked in the kitchen of Adham's household and served as a khadim to many dervishes. However, as he had no interest whatsoever in his own lineage, the author of the Bahāristān-i Shāhī makes no reference to the subsequent activities of Husamuddin and his descendants. One Indian scholar, Muhibur Hassan, claimed that the author was a Shiite, and another Kashmiri scholar, Abdul Qayyum Rafiqi, speculated that the author was in service of the Baihaqi side family. I will discuss the Baihaqi side family later. But judging from the text of the Bahāristān-i Shāhī, it is certain that the author had veneration for the 12 imams, it is certain. But simultaneously, he also expressed veneration for the Sufi sheikhs such as Ali Hamadani, a Kubrawi Sufi Shaykh, and Shamsuddin Iraqi, a Nurbashi Shaykh. If the author of the Bahāristān-i Shāhī was Shiite, this would imply that he considered these Kubrawiya and Nurbashia Shaykhs to belong to the Shiites. However, the Bahāristān-i Shāhī does not contain sufficient information to prove this. Furthermore, Abdul Qayyum Rafiqi's basis for claiming that the author served the Baihaqi Said family is the detailed information regarding the Baihaqi Saids in the Bahāristān-i Shāhī itself. But this text also includes the detailed information about the Nurbashia. So the Rafiqi's claim is not sufficient. The speaker thinks that it is more reasonable to view that the author simply held a broad veneration for the Ahlul Bayt members and the Sufi Shaykhs. And on the other hand, there is in the first quarter of the 17th century, the Nurbashia community in Kashmir was in the process of being absorbed into Tuba Shiism. Perhaps the author was a figure who reflected this religious trend in the first quarter of the 17th century.